In this session, we will do a few things. First, we will get acquainted with the different types of copying. Second, we will get acquainted with the array tool, and we will also explain normals and their effect on rendering. And considering the time we have left, we will also give an explanation about naming. Hello and good morning to all my dear students. I hope you had a great time. I am here to continue with the 7th session of the 3ds Max training. Very well, I created a box and added some segments to it because I want to apply a modifier to it. We have a few ways to copy this box. First, we can go to the main menu, choose Edit, and then select the Clone option. This window will open for us, and it has various options that I will explain to you. The second way, as you may have noticed, is using Ctrl+V. By pressing Ctrl+V in the scene, the same window opens again. And when we copy in instance or reference mode, it creates another volume in there. It creates another volume in the scene for us. The third way is through transforms. Whether we are in move mode, rotate mode, or scale mode, when we hold Shift and create a transform, meaning we hold Shift and move, or hold Shift and rotate, or hold Shift and scale, a copy is created. Now I make the volume a little smaller or larger, or scale it. This performs the transformation for us, and at the same time, it also performs the copying. So now, what is that window that appears when copying? If I activate Move, hold Shift, and copy the object once, a window appears. In this window, it gives us options such as Copy and Instance. And it also asks whether we want to copy the controllers of the first volume. Whether it is Copy mode or Instance mode, it tells us how many copies to make. Since we do not have any controllers on our volume right now, this section is disabled. We can specify how many copies we want, for example, 2 copies or 3 copies. It copies the objects for us with the same distance and the same amount of transformation that we applied. Now I will explain naming right here. In naming in 3ds Max and in our files in general, especially in the Windows environment, it is better to follow a consistent naming model. The first letter should be uppercase and the rest lowercase, and we should only use English letters. For example, I want to write box 02. I type a capital B, then O and X. If I want to add anything else to the name, I write it immediately after that. I do not use a hyphen, and instead I use an underline, so we do not put any spaces. If you want to add something else, use capital letters again if needed. For example, box copy, or if you want to add a number, use an underline and then 02. Never put any space. You can also use names like Jabe_02 as long as you follow the same rule, the first letter uppercase, the rest lowercase, using underline and never using spaces. What is the difference between copy, instance, and reference? Let me explain instance and reference first. I select the shape, choose instance mode, clone it, and click OK. Now you can see that the Make Unique option has been activated. As I mentioned in the previous session, when we copy in instance mode, Make Unique becomes active, which tells us that this shape is now an instance. if the reference symbol appears. It means that the shape has been copied in instance or reference mode. If you click on the first shape, you will also see this symbol. Now I select the second shape, the one that was copied. I apply a modifier to it, for example, a bend modifier. You can see that the bend gizmo is placed on the volume. When we apply the bend modifier to the second shape, it is also applied to the first shape. If you select the first shape, you will see that the bend modifier exists there as well. Any changes we make are applied to both shapes, and you can see the result on both of them. So when you copy a shape in instance mode, any change you make to one shape will also be applied to the other shape, and this works in both directions. Now I will make another copy of the first shape, this time in reference mode. Let's see what happens. The shape already has a bend modifier. If I change its settings, you can see that the changes are applied to both volumes. Now, is there a difference between instance and reference? We select the shape that was copied in reference mode, and we can see a line in the modifier stack. Here, the Make Unique option is turned off. Now, I apply another modifier, for example, the FFD 2x2 modifier. I make some changes, and you can see that these changes are applied only to the referenced shape. The same happens if I apply a lattice modifier and adjust the edges and end caps. The changes affect only the referenced volume. However, if I apply changes to the original shape, those changes are also applied to the referenced shape. Now let's talk about copy mode. If I choose copy mode and make changes to the second shape, you will see that there are no changes on the first shape. And if I make changes to the first shape, the copied shape is not affected. So in copy mode, there is no connection between the shapes. In instance mode, changes affect both shapes. In reference mode, changes from the original affect the referenced shape, but not the other way around. In the modifier stack, the gray bar shows us where the reference begins. Any changes made below this line affect both shapes. Any changes made above this gray bar affect only the referenced shape. If we click Make Unique, the object becomes independent. There will be no link between the shapes anymore. Now, to keep this session from becoming too long, I will briefly explain normals. The array tool will be explained in the next session. I delete these volumes and clear the scene. Then I convert a shape to editable poly. I will explain editable poly later, so you do not need to focus on it now. I apply a normal modifier. You can see a series of blue lines coming out of the surface. These lines show the direction of the normals. Normals tell us which side of the surface is facing outward and where the material will be displayed. If I flip the normals, you will see that the shape turns black. This means the material is now facing inward. This black side is actually the back face of the surface. Normals show us where the material and texture maps are applied, and they are very important for correct rendering.